subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll get set up with a trial Monday.com account and we'll walk through all the various plans that are available. If you already have an account, there's no need to set up a new one. You can just continue using your existing account. But if you don't have one yet, follow along and then you'll set up a trial account. The trial period is 2 weeks, which should be ample time to get familiar with the tool and start working on it. So let's get started. In your web browser, navigate to https://monday.com. This takes you to the landing page. Once you're on the landing page, you can click on the Get Started button. You can sign up in 4 ways: using your email address, using your Google account, using LinkedIn or Slack. If your team uses Google Workspace, it's probably best to use the Google option. Else, I'd suggest using your email address. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use an email sign-up. After I provide my email address, it simply asks me for a few additional pieces of information. In particular, you need to provide an account name. This is probably your company name or your team name, and it'll be used to refer to the Monday instance. I'm going to use Monday Course. You also get asked to provide a little bit of contextual information about how you will be using Monday.com. I'll just pick some random values for now. And lastly, if you'll be using Monday.com as part of a team, you can invite your team members immediately. In our case, we'll skip this step for now. Based on your selections, you'll be provided with a few potential template products built directly on Monday.com. But of course, since we'll be learning how to build our own products, we'll close this window. Now, finally, we're brought to our first sample board in Monday.com. Just to also take note, like with most online signups, they sent through an email to the email address that I provided, and we need to click on a confirmation button just to confirm that this is our email address. So I'm going to do that now. All right, that's it. Now you have an account and we can get started. As a short aside, trial accounts are based on the Pro plan. You can see a summary of all the different plans by navigating to monday.com/pricing. I use the Pro plan on a day-to-day basis, and we'll be using that throughout the course. But depending on your needs, you might rather choose another plan. Perhaps sign up for the standard plan. I would not recommend the basic plan because then you don't have access to the automations and integrations, which in my opinion is the most important feature of monday.com. So that's it for now. Once you've signed up for your account, I'll see you in the next lesson where we'll begin building cool things. Cheers. Welcome back. In this lesson, I'll take you on a whirlwind tour of the monday.com user interface. Each of these sections will be covered in more detail during later videos. After logging into monday.com, you won't always be taken to the same place. It really depends on the URL you use. But generally, you will land on the inbox. The inbox is where you can see all of the new updates from boards you are subscribed to. So instead of checking all of the many boards to see what's new, you can just head over to the inbox and see everything in one place. In general, the UI is divided into a few separate areas. Let's run through them one by one. On the left-hand side, you have the menu bar running vertically across the screen. Note that you can expand the menu bar by clicking on the Monday icon top left. Then you can collapse the menu easily by clicking on the collapse arrow. The top item in the menu will open the Workspaces and boards. This is where you'll spend the bulk of your time. Next is the notifications, often simply referred to as the bell icon. Here you will receive in-app notifications of important events. Then we have the inbox, which of course we've discussed already. Next up is the My Work area. This is a new feature in monday.com. It replaces the original legacy My Week page. The My Work page provides a calendar-driven view of all the items on your plate. Notice that it breaks down items according to their due dates into various categories like overdue, due today, due this week, due next week, due after next week or later, and items that don't have due dates at all. The little puzzle icon is used to access Monday apps. These are extensions to the platform, and you're also able to build your own apps quite easily. Notice when I click on the icon, it opens up the Apps Marketplace, which includes a range of different apps that can be used with monday.com. For example, let's assume you want to generate documents from data inside monday.com. This is not available within the vanilla Monday functionality, but there's an app for that. In that scenario, you'll just install the DocuGen app. The person icon is for inviting your team members. You can easily invite team members by adding their email addresses, or you can simply copy the invite link, which you can then share on another chat channel. If you're like me, you probably spend a large percentage of your life searching for things. In my case, I spend at least 2 hours a week just searching for my car keys. Luckily, Monday has a solution for that, the Search Everything screen. Here you can search through the entire platform, including boards, updates, comments, users, etc. We'll discuss Search Everything in a little bit more detail in a later section. The question mark allows you to access the Monday help content, which is quite comprehensive. And right at the bottom of the screen is your profile picture. If you click on the picture, it opens a big menu with many different options. We'll touch on a few of these throughout the course, but the bulk of the screen is used where you will be working with your boards. To open a board, you simply click on the Workspaces menu and select the relevant board. In my case, I'll open the default board that was created when we created our account. We'll explore Workspaces and boards in the next session. See you there. Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll dive a bit deeper into Workspaces, boards, and items. These represent the fundamental building blocks of your Monday.com instance. The atomic unit in Monday.com is an item. Items represent things that you want to manage, like tasks, milestones, orders, invoices, etc. Anything really. Monday allows you to easily configure the data you store about items as columns. In truth, this is quite similar to a spreadsheet, just a lot more powerful, as you'll soon see. Boards are lists of items. For example, if you're tracking bookings for your guest house, then each item may represent an individual booking. The board would then be a list of all bookings. Boards are often broken into groups, allowing additional contextual information about items. In our booking example, the groups may be new inquiries, confirmed bookings, paid bookings, etc. Workspaces, on the other hand, help us group boards together into logical units. In larger organizations, this may correspond to different teams. In the guesthouse example that we'll be using in this course, the workspaces may include bookings, maintenance, marketing, and finance. These definitions will quickly make sense when you start building boards. So let's get started with that immediately. I'll kick us off by creating a new workspace for our bookings. To create a new workspace, simply select the Add Workspace option from the Workspace dropdown. You simply need to provide a workspace name and click the Create Workspace button. That creates an empty workspace for us. To create a new board, simply select Add New Board from the Workspaces menu. You will be asked to provide 3 pieces of information: a board name, information about the board privacy, and an idea about what types of items your board will contain. In our case, we'll build a board for tracking guesthouse bookings. We'll dig a bit deeper into the privacy types in a future lesson. After the board is created, Monday pre-populates it with some default groups, items, and columns. We'll delete them for now and start from scratch. Okay, so now we have a blank slate. Our board has only one group and only one column, the item's name. Strictly speaking, we can already use this board to add bookings, but our bookings would be quite limited. This is not ideal though, because we only know who made the booking. We don't have any additional information. We could of course add the additional information as part of the item name, but that won't be ideal because then we can't process that data. Since our board will store bookings, we will want to track a few pieces of information per booking. In particular, we will want to track the person making the booking, the number of guests, the person's email and phone number, the booking period, and the status of the booking. These properties will be stored as columns, and here you can think of a board as a spreadsheet which stores an individual booking per row. To store different pieces of information about a booking, we simply add columns, just like we would in a spreadsheet. Monday has a large number of powerful column types, and we'll explore them throughout this course. Let's create these columns one by one. For the person name, we'll just use the item name itself to store the person who makes the booking, so we don't actually need to add an extra column. For the number of guests, we will add a column. To add a column, I click on the plus icon on the top right. Then you select the column type. In this case, the column type will be numbers. After you select the type, the column is automatically added with a default name. So to rename it according to your needs, simply click on the column heading and rename it. For emails, we'll also add a new column. Notice, however, that the list of column types does not include an email column type. We could, of course, pick a text column, but let's explore further. If you click on the More Columns option, you are presented with a large list of column types. Let's scroll through the list to see what we find. In the Board Power Up category, you'll see an email column type. Let's pick that. And like previously, we rename the column according to our needs. The value of the email column over normal text columns are that you can use them to send automated emails from automations in Monday.com. For the guest phone number, we'll follow a similar procedure to add a phone number column. In this case, however, instead of scrolling through all the options, we'll simply use the search capability. For the booking period, we'll use another powerful column type in Monday, the timeline column. A timeline is actually two dates defining the start and end point of a time period. This is ideal for our booking system because we will track a guest's check-in and check-out dates. Lastly, we'll add a status column for tracking the status of a booking. Status columns have a very special purpose in Monday.com. They are used to store a single value based on a predefined list. Adding a status column is exactly the same as any other column, but after the column is added, you can configure the allowed options by clicking on the column and picking the Add Edit Labels option. It's quite intuitive to configure the items. I'll create 4 statuses for bookings: inquiry, confirmed, paid, and complete. Notice that I simply added the items and changed the names. Lastly, all I need to do is just click on Apply, and the status options would be applied. And that's it. We now have a board that allows us to capture and track bookings for our guest house. Let's test it out by capturing a booking inquiry. Of course, this is still quite basic, but we'll improve on it as we learn more. Welcome back. In the previous lesson, we learned about boards and items. In this lesson, we'll learn about another critical component of Monday.com solutions, dashboards. Dashboards allow us to visualize the information from our boards. This is the real power of Monday.com. It helps the whole team interact with real-time data in a very visual manner. Dashboards are built up from widgets of various kinds. We'll explore a number of different widgets throughout the course, but for now, I'll just work with 1 or 2. A key aspect to understand about dashboards is that they're used to combine data from different boards. This makes it possible to surface insights that often hide between business workflows. And since dashboards play a role similar to reports in business, Monday also offers the ability to send dashboards out via a scheduled email. And, of course, like what happens in many offices, dashboards are often projected onto TV screens in the office. To make this process simpler, Monday actually offers a TV mode for your dashboards that make projecting to a large screen easier. Let's switch to Monday. So here we have our bookings board from the previous lesson. Let's build a simple dashboard based on the data that we've got. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add a new dashboard to our workspace. To add a dashboard, I will click on Add New Dashboard. Now I need to provide a name for the dashboard and a privacy level. We'll discuss the details about privacy in a future lesson. For now, you can just note that it is possible to make dashboards accessible to all users or only to a selected group of users in your business. Next, you'll need to select the boards that will provide data for the dashboards. In our case, we'll select our bookings board, and this allows our dashboard to access all the information from the bookings board. Now that we have a dashboard, it's time to add some widgets to it. We'll start with a simple widget, a numeric widget telling us the average number of guests per booking. To add this widget, I'm going to click on the Add Widget button. Then I select the Numbers widget type, and this will add the widget to our canvas. Now we can rename the widget as needed. To configure the widget, you click on the 3 dots for more options, and then click Settings. Okay, this opens the settings for our widget. Here you can select which columns to use, what functions to be applied, and much more. Our basic board only has one numeric column, so it is selected by default. All we really need to do is to choose the correct function from the list. So I open up More Settings options and change the function from Sum to Average. Now I can simply close the settings and voila, there we go. Average guests per booking. We have a dashboard widget. To make our dashboard a little bit more fun, I'm going to import a bit of data into our board first. Note, I'll be importing data from an Excel file, but we have a full lesson covering data imports later in the course, so I won't explain any details for now. I'll also speed up the video slightly so that I won't waste any time. Okay, so now we have a bookings board with a number of bookings covering a range of different statuses. For simplicity, I've just made them all the exact same booking period. A handy widget for our dashboard might be a bar chart that shows the number of bookings per status. Let's add that now. Once again, we click on the Add Widget button, but this time we select Chart. Notice that Monday automatically makes an informed guess about the chart required based on the data in our board. Pretty nifty. It just so happens that Monday selection is perfect for our requirements, so I'll just leave it as is. The one thing I might do is just rename it. To round things out, I'll add one last numbers widget that should provide a count of the number of inquiries awaiting a response. For this widget, the process is almost exactly the same as with our initial numbers widget, but with 3 changes. Firstly, I'll rename the widget right here in the settings window. Secondly, I'll select the count function. Thirdly, I will filter the widget to only show bookings in the inquiry status. To add a filter, I simply click on the little filter button. Filters can be added in 2 modes, quick filters or advanced filters. I generally prefer the advanced view. To add a filter, I simply select which column to filter on. In our case, we'll select the status column. Then I select the filter condition, in our case, is, and lastly, I select the value to use. In our case, we'll select inquiry. So that gives us a filter that will find all bookings where the status is inquiry. Lastly, I'll just drag around my widgets to look a little prettier. And there we have it, a useful, albeit simplistic dashboard for our guesthouse bookings. In the next lesson, we'll add some automations to the board. See you there. Welcome back. Up to now, we've explored boards and dashboards in Monday.com. In this lesson, we'll explore the most exciting piece of the Monday.com ecosystem, automations and integrations. Automations turn Monday into a real work operating system. Instead of just being a place where you capture data, it drives the process for you by triggering automated actions or by simply sending relevant reminders to stakeholders about the items they're responsible for. From an integration point of view, Monday pulls together all the different tools you use on a day-to-day basis. This allows you to link tools together instead of working in separate silos. And lastly, automations are very effective at coordinating data between different Monday.com boards. This helps ensure that your business workflows don't become fragmented. Let's jump into Monday and begin exploring. Here I'm back in the Bookings workspace, as we left it after the previous lesson. With the Bookings board open, you will notice 2 menu items on the top right. One is labeled Integrate and the other Automate. This is perhaps a great opportunity to highlight an important thing to be aware of. Under the covers, automations and integrations are actually the same thing. The difference is that automations only automate actions within Monday.com, while integrations automate actions where your Monday.com instance interacts with external systems like Gmail, Office 365, and many others. In this overview lesson, we'll build one simple automation to explain the concept. We then have 2 detailed lessons later in the course to do a deeper dive into automations and integrations respectively. But before we begin to build, let's first establish some fundamental understanding. To help explain this, I'm going to open up the Custom Automation dialog. Automations are built up from 2 parts that effectively form a sentence. When something happens, do something. For example, when an item is created, notify someone. This simple pattern is extremely powerful because it can capture almost any type of automation, but it remains simple to understand. Additionally, your Monday.com instance comes pre-built with a large number of automation recipes that have been pre-built ready for you to use. So let's go back to our board and build an automation from scratch. As our first baby step, let's add an automation that notifies you when a booking is paid. This is a typical business requirement in the hospitality industry because the guest house owner would need to schedule housekeeping, etc. To add this automation, we click on the Automate button. This opens the Automation Center, which lists a long list of predefined, pre-built automation recipes, broken down into various categories. You can see the categories include things like notifications, status changes, item creation, etc. Theoretically, you can scroll through this entire list, but be aware it's a long list. Another option is to first select your category and then scroll through the list in that category. However, the most efficient solution is to use the search box, which is found right at the top. We want to build an automation that notifies us when a booking changes into the paid status. So I'll just type status notify. This filters the list to only show the relevant recipes, and of course there is a specific recipe matching our needs. When status changes to something, notify someone. Let's click on the recipe to configure it. The first part of the recipe, the trigger, needs to specify which status should be monitored and what value should trigger the automation. And remember, since this automation is associated with a board, it implies that the trigger will fire only for items in our bookings board. Notice that the words status and something are underlined. This is an indication that these pieces must be configured. Let's configure them. First, we need to tell Monday which status we want to monitor. So we click on the underlined word status. Once you click it, Monday asks us to confirm which column in our board is the one we're interested in. Now in our case, our board only has a single status column, so the decision is easy. I just click on the status block. Then, magically, Monday provides me with a list of all the available statuses for the selected column. We want to trigger an automation when the status changes to paid, so I select paid. That's all we need to do to configure the trigger part of the automation. So whenever an item's status changes to paid, the automation will trigger. Now all we need to do is to configure what should happen after the trigger fires. Specifically, we need to configure two things. We must specify who should be notified, and we must specify the wording of the notification. Notice that the words notify and someone are underlined, once again indicating that they should be configured. So let's configure them now. I'll start from the back and specify who should be notified. As always, I'll just begin by clicking on the word. This pops up a dialog allowing us to specify who should be notified. Now there's various ways that we can select the person, perhaps by searching the list of subscribers in our Monday.com instance or from a column in the board. In our case, we'll keep it simple and just select me. Notice that the recipe is now filled in and displays Greg Fullard as the person who will be notified. Of course, if you're following along, as you should see your name there. Now we can configure what text should appear in the notification. As always, we start by clicking the word notify, and now we're presented with a dialog box in which we can type the notification message. But we can also enrich the message with data attributes from the columns in our board. In our case, the notification should tell us the name of the person making the booking, perhaps the number of guests, the booking period, and the current status. So let's configure those now. I'll type the sentence, "Great news, a booking has been paid. Details below." Then I'll add a line break and provide some details of the booking. For each field, I'll type the field name and then pull the field value in by clicking on the relevant board column. For better readability, I'll add each field on a separate line. Once I've completed the configuration, I can simply click away. At this point, the Create Automation button at the bottom right is activated. So let's click on it to create our automation. Awesome. So the automation has now been added to our board. To test our automation, let's close this window and update an item in our booking board. I'll grab the booking by Paul McCartney for 4 guests. To update the status to paid, I simply click on the status column and select paid. As soon as this is done, you should see a little red bubble appear on the left-hand side of the screen next to the notification bell. This notification appears to us specifically because we selected me for the person to be notified. If we click on the bell icon, we can actually see the notification, and we can also mark it as read or even delete it. It's important to be aware that notifications can also be given to the user via email or via push message in the Monday desktop app. The preferred behavior can be configured by the user as part of their user profile. By default, though, notifications are also sent via email. So here's the email I received from Monday.com. So there we have it, our first fully functional automation in Monday.com. Integrations work in a very similar way, but they allow us to take the capability even further by linking up Monday to external services like Gmail, Google Calendar, MailChimp, Office 365, and many other third-party services. So this concludes the overview section of the course. At this stage, you should have a decent feeling of the core building blocks of Monday.com. From here on, we'll dig deeper into the capabilities of the platform. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In the previous section, we built up a basic understanding of the main aspects of Monday.com. In this section of the course, we'll dig a bit deeper into the various aspects related to boards and items. In this lesson, we'll look at boards. Specifically, we'll explore creating and deleting various board types. You can think of a Monday board like a virtual whiteboard. It's a place where you store lists of things that you work on. In Section 2, Lesson 2, I showed you the basics of creating a board. In short, in the Workspace menu, you just click Add and select New Board. So that's pretty simple. Now let's explore the meaning of the 3 privacy options when creating a board. The 3 options are Main, Private, and Shareable. Main boards are accessible to everyone in your account. So that's pretty simple to understand. And when we built our bookings board, that's precisely what we did. But you often need to work with things on Monday.com that can't be shared freely with everyone. A typical example is commissions paid to salespeople. So for those scenarios, Monday.com offers private boards. With private boards, you have to explicitly invite team members to a board for them to be able to see it. For demonstration purposes, I've created a second user in my account, Sarah. She works in the finance department and is responsible for tracking sales commissions. Let's create a private board for that. After the private board is created, I first need to invite Sarah to the board. At that stage, she will be able to see it. To invite Sarah, click on the Invite option at the top right. Then I search for and select her name. At this stage, I can close the dialog and Sarah will be able to see the board. She will also be able to edit information on the board. However, she will still not be able to adjust the structure of the board, for example, adding a new column. If she needs full permissions to change the structure of the board, I first need to make her a board owner as well. This is done by clicking the little crown icon. Once this is done, Sarah will receive a notification to inform her that she has been invited to join the board. An important aspect to realize is that until now, our boards could only be accessed by our Monday.com account users. What happens if you want to share a board's content with external parties? For example, we may use subcontractors for cleaning the guest house rooms. We would want to share our cleaning schedule with the cleaning crew. But since there's a cost involved, we wouldn't want to register our cleaning staff as Monday users. For this scenario, Monday offers shareable boards. So let's create a shareable board by selecting the shareable privacy type. A shareable board can be securely shared with external parties. Those parties would only be able to see the board that is shared with them and nothing else. When I click on the invite link for a shareable board, the dialog looks a bit different. Notice that you can now provide an email address for a guest. If you add a guest to a board, they will have the same experience as normal users like logging in, etc., but they would only be able to access this one board. For demonstration purposes, let me invite a guest to this board. The guest then receives an invite email, very similar to any normal user. Great stuff. So now we've created 3 boards already, one for each of the privacy types. Of course, it's possible that you initially create a board with one type, but need to change it later on. This is perfectly possible to do. With the board open, just follow these steps. Click on the three dots on the top right of the board menu, go to the board settings, go to change board type, and select the appropriate type. Alternatively, from the Workspace menu, you can also click the three dots next to the board name. Lastly, in this topic, you may want to delete a board that you created accidentally, or perhaps a board that you no longer use. This is also done using the board menu. For demonstration purposes, let me delete the cleaning schedule board. There are, of course, many other small little tweaks available for boards, but you will figure those out as you use the platform and grow in confidence. In these next few lessons, we'll explore the different types of columns that you can add to boards. See you there! Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll explore three columns that are often used together on Monday.com boards: the People column, the Status column, and the Date column. These three columns are found on almost every Monday.com board I've come across. The reason is also quite obvious. If you're tracking stuff, often you need to know who's working on it, when will it be done, and what's the current status. So let's look at each of them in turn, starting with the People column. For demonstration purposes, I'll create a new board for guest house maintenance. Notice that the default board structure already contains a People column. Of course, if it wasn't there, you can easily add it by clicking on the plus button and selecting a People column. With the People column, you can assign each item in your board to a specific team member. You can also assign an item to more than one person. Take note, though, that you can only assign to people in your account. Let me create a new maintenance task and assign it to Sarah. After I've assigned the item to Sarah, she will receive a notification of the assignment, and depending on her preferences, she'll also receive an email notification. Okay, let's move on to the status columns. Conceptually, the status column is very simple. It just stores a single value from a predefined list. But the designers at Monday have ensured that statuses have bold, clearly distinguishable colors. So by using the status columns, you can visually define aspects like prioritization and progress on tasks. These bold colors help the viewer to instantly understand the big picture of a board, even before digging into the details. Adding a status column is of course exactly the same as adding any other column, and once again, our demo board already has a status column in place. By default, status columns have three values: stuck, working on it, and done. But these can easily be changed. Simply click on one of the status column cells, then select Add Edit Labels, and here you can rename the text in any of the labels. Let me rename the Working on It label to In Progress. You can also change the color of the status by clicking on the color dropper. And of course, you can add new statuses by selecting New Label. You can also change the order of the items by hovering over the item, waiting for the handle to appear, and then dragging it. When you're done with your changes, simply click the Apply button. One or more of the statuses in your list can be given a superpower by defining them with the meaning of done. This means that for reporting purposes, tasks in this status are deemed to be completed. To set the statuses that mean done, you click on the column heading, select column settings, and then select the colors that should be interpreted as done. In our case, I'm selecting done and cancelled as done columns. That means that those items would not require any further work. As a final note on the status column, they can be used for much more than just tracking statuses of things. Use them whenever you need a highly visual breakdown of your data. Examples include prioritizing tasks, categorizing items between business units, tracking interim milestones on larger tasks, and much more. Okay then, let's move on to the third essential column in Monday.com, dates. It should come as no surprise that date columns are an essential part of most Monday.com boards. Since you're an expert at adding columns by now, you should probably have figured out that you can simply add a date column by clicking on the plus sign and then selecting date. Of course, since our board already contains a date column, I won't add a new one just yet. Let's rather have a look at some of the options for working with dates. Once a date column is in the board, you can capture dates by simply clicking on the column and selecting a date from the calendar. The date picker is very intuitive and makes it easy to select any specific day or today by clicking on the Today link. It's also easy to change the year if you need to select long ago dates. And if you need to specify an exact time, you can easily enable the Add Time option at the bottom of the date picker. One last thing to notice is the little smiley face at the top right of the date picker. This allows you to add some extra meaning to dates. For example, a question mark icon might indicate that you're not 100% certain about the date. You can also adjust the overall configuration of the column by selecting the column settings. The options here allow you to adjust how the date is displayed. For example, you can make the day of the week and year be displayed. You can also enable week numbers. This will show the week's number in the current year as part of the date picker, which is a useful feature for weekly timesheet solutions. And there's also an option to force the Add Time option to always be enabled. Lastly, and very important, is the ability to synchronize individual date columns with Google Calendar, and other calendars in fact. This will ensure that items from Monday.com automatically show up in your Google Calendar, an absolute lifesaver. Let me set one up as an example. I'll click on the Sync button, then I indicate that I want all dates to be synchronized, not just items assigned to me. At this point, I just need to give the relevant permissions, and then it's done. If I now open up my Google Calendar, there will be a new calendar added, along with events from Monday.com. Notice here the new calendar maintenance dates and the item Replace Bathroom Mirror. Of course, there are many other things you can do with people, status, and date columns, but at this point you should be comfortable enough to explore on your own. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to link up these essential columns into a deadline combo. See you there. Welcome back. In the previous lesson, we learned about 3 essential columns in Monday.com: people, status, and date columns. In real life, we often have scenarios where tasks get assigned to specific people who need to complete a task by a specific date, aka we often manage deadlines. And deadlines link up to those 3 pieces of information: the person, the status, and the date. Monday has a specific capability for this linkage called the deadline column. Let me show you how it works by linking together the 3 independent columns from our previous lesson. I just select the little down arrow next to the date column title. Then I pick the Set as Deadline option. This brings up a dialog that asks me to specify the linked status and person columns. Note, for deadline combos, the person is optional, and then I just click on the Connect Columns button. After this is done, you'll see 2 small changes in the board. Firstly, you'll notice that the headings of the 3 connected columns are given a gray background. That serves as an indication that they are now linked. And secondly, you'll see a small icon is added to the date column, which indicates whether we're on track to meet the deadline. Currently, it shows a little exclamation mark, which implies we have missed our deadline. Whoopsie. So how does Monday know whether a deadline has been met? Well, if you remember from the previous lesson that we had the ability to specify which status means that a task is done. That information is used here to populate the deadline status. As you can see there, both of those tasks are in progress, and therefore they have not been completed and the deadline date has passed. If I switch any of them to done, we'll see that the icon gets adjusted because we have now met our deadline. As a short aside, you can also apply the deadline logic on timeline columns. Here we applied it on a normal date column. And lastly, if your board doesn't yet contain the necessary date and status columns, you can add a new deadline combo column. Just click on the plus icon, click on More Columns, search for Combo, and then select Add to Board on the relevant combo for your needs. So you'll click either the Date plus Status or the Timeline plus Status column. It'll automatically add the 2 required columns for your deadline. Since we don't need this last set of dates, I'll delete them for now. And that's it for this short lesson on deadline combos. In the next lesson, we'll dig a bit deeper into 2 other essential columns: text and numbers. See you there. Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll explore 3 columns that often carry a lot of valuable information in our boards on Monday.com: text columns, long text columns, and number columns. Let's look at each of them while expanding the maintenance board that we built in the previous lesson. In our example, we want to add 3 additional pieces of information to each maintenance task. Firstly, we may need to add information about the contractor that we'll use for the job. For this, we'll use a text column. Secondly, we may need to provide additional long-form information about the task. For that, we'll use a long text column. And lastly, we want to track the costs associated with the task, and for that, we'll use a numbers column. Let's add a text column. By now, you'll be comfortable with adding new columns. Just click the plus icon and select text. Just be aware that text columns can only store a single line of text. For the contractor name, this is perfectly fine, but if we need to capture multiple lines of text, then we'll need to add a long text column. Let's do that now for the additional information column. And lastly, let's round things out by adding a column to store the budget for this task. Unlike spreadsheets, Monday does not have separate columns for currency values, decimal values, and integer values. Instead, there's just a single numbers column, which can be configured according to your needs. Let's add the column. And to ensure the column is interpreted correctly, we'll go to the column settings and add the correct units. Here we indicate that the unit is dollars and that it should be shown on the left-hand side of the numeric value. At this point, I just want to highlight something about the summary row in the group of items. Notice that the summary row automatically sums up all the rows in our list. This can be easily adjusted by simply clicking on the summary cell. For example, if I needed to see the average value in the total row, I just need to adjust the function. And to show that the average is correctly calculated, I'll just add some values into all the empty rows. And that's all I wanted to show you about text and numbers columns. In the next lesson, we'll find out how to build boards using templates, either our own templates or pre-built templates that are supplied by Monday.com. See you there. Welcome back. Until now, we've been building our boards from scratch by first adding a board and then adding columns as needed. This works well, but you also have the option to leverage previous board layouts, either your own or someone else's. Monday provides board templates for this purpose. Let's start by creating and using our own board template. Once you're familiar with this concept, it'll be easy to understand how to use templates from the built-in templates provided by Monday. Let's assume our guest house uses a standardized project plan at the start of each holiday season. This project plan includes tasks like doing a stock take of the linens, checking the crockery in the self-catering rooms, doing a refresh of the photos of the website, and much more. At the start of each season, we could create a new project board and add the tasks to it, but it would be easier if we can leverage a pre-built board and just adjust it as needed. To do this, we first have to create the board, adding the groups, columns, and items as needed. Now, I've prepared a sample project board beforehand. It just lists a few tasks and the people who are responsible for them. Once the board is prepared, we can simply convert it to a template. So I just select the board menu by clicking on the 3 dots on the top right. Then I open More Actions. I select Save as Template. This pops up an information box, and I can just click the Create Template button. Once the board is converted to a template, you'll see the icon change to include a little magic wand. At this stage, I can easily create a new board using this template as the starting point. Let me show you how. In the Workspace menu, I'll click on Add, but instead of selecting New Board, I select Choose from Template. This brings up a big list of templates that are built into Monday.com. Now you can simply use the search box to search for your template. Once it's found, you can just click on Use Template, and then you just set up the board as usual. Notice that the new board already contains all the items that were identified in the template. In truth, this is quite similar to simply duplicating a board. Let's move on to some of the built-in templates that are supplied by Monday.com. I'll open the Template Center by clicking on Add and Choose from Template. This is a big list of templates that have been pre-configured by the smart people at Monday. The templates each have a specific use case in mind and often includes multiple boards that work together. Additionally, they're organized into categories to help you find something that makes sense to you. In the case of our guest house, we may want to use Monday to plan and manage the content calendar for our blog. So I'll open the content production category, and as luck would have it, there's an existing template for blog planning. Before using the template, I can first get additional information by clicking on the preview option, and once I'm happy, I can then create the board from the template. Notice that the template board includes a number of columns and sample content. At this stage, you can adjust it according to your needs by adding or removing columns, etc. Perhaps it's also worth noting that this board includes a number of additional views. This includes a calendar view, a Kanban view, a workload view, and much more. We haven't discussed board views in the course yet, but in the next section, we'll get there. Obviously, you can spend many hours looking at the different templates in the Template Center to find the best one for your needs. We've just showed one example to get you started. Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll explore the ways in which you can add data into boards. This covers 3 methods: capturing individual items, capturing items in bulk, and importing data. So we'll start with the easy one, capturing individual items. That's what we've been doing the whole course. Effectively, it's a 2-stage process in which you first create an item and then populate data into the columns. So let's look at our bookings board. Before we talk about item creation, it's probably valuable to just explore groups for a second. Groups are the divisions in a board that divide your data into logical sections. Groups can be anything that makes sense in your business. Oftentimes, though, we use groups to serve as status buckets for different items, i.e. a single group contains all the items with a single status. In our bookings example, this means we will have 4 groups, one for each status. Let me create those groups now and quickly sort the items accordingly. Firstly, I'll just rename the 2 existing groups by clicking on the name and changing it as needed. To create a group, you click on the down arrow next to the New Item button and select New Group. Now that I have my groups, I'll quickly move the items into their relevant groups. I'll do this with a batch action. First, I select a set of items that I want to move. This is done by hovering over the left side of the item and selecting the checkbox. Notice that as soon as I select an item, a floating menu appears. We'll use that menu just now. First, I want to make sure that all of the items are selected for a single status. Then, in the floating menu, I'll select Move to Group, and then select the correct group. As a last step, I'll change the color of each group to match the color of the corresponding status. This is done by opening up the Group menu and selecting Change Group Color. The ordering of the groups is quite important here. Ideally, a booking should start in the top group and move down the board until completed. I'll adjust the order of the groups by using the drag and drop handles. So let's now add a new item. One option to add a new item is to click on the New Booking button right at the top of the board. This creates a booking at the top of the first group in the board. Once the item is added, you can proceed to capture values into the relevant columns, including the name of the item. Another option is to add an item directly into a specific group. Notice that each group has an option to add an item at the bottom. Once again, you would first create the item and then provide the column values. Let me add a confirmed booking for a walk-in customer. In a later video, I'll add an automation that will move items into the correct group based on the value of the status column. Sometimes you may have a list of items that you want to add together, not one by one. This can be done by creating a separate text file with the names of each of the items you want on a separate line. Here, I'm just creating a file containing the members of Queen. After I've created this file, I select all the items and copy them. And then, back in Monday, after clicking on the Add Booking link, I paste the copied values. Notice that 4 separate items were created, but just with their item names. Of course, with this approach, you would still need to capture the column data individually. To avoid that effort, Monday offers the ability to import data from various source formats, including an Excel file. Let me show you how that's done. But first, let me delete the 4 members of Queen by using a batch action. Since they are already selected, I don't have to do anything with regards to selecting them. I just go into the floating menu and click on Delete and confirm my deletion. Okay, so in order to import the data, I will need to first have a spreadsheet. Here's a spreadsheet with the details of the members of Queen. Back in Monday.com, I can select the import option, which is found when clicking on the down arrow that is part of the New Item button. This brings up the import dialog. First, we should select the file to be uploaded. So I'll just drag the file onto this box. Then we can click on Next. Here you should select the column from the spreadsheet, which should be treated as the item name. In our case, this is easy. We just pick the name column. Then I click on Next. In this screen, we need to map the remaining columns from the spreadsheet to columns on our Monday.com board. Notice that Monday makes a decent guess, but you'll need to verify them just to be sure. Also, unfortunately, timeline columns are not yet supported for data imports, so we'll need to capture those by hand. I'll double check here. I see the number of guests need to be updated. Email is fine, phone is fine. These two, as I mentioned, unfortunately are not mapped, and status. And lastly, we need to tell Monday how to handle duplicates, if any are found. The options are to just create new duplicate items, to skip the duplicate entirely, or to overwrite the existing items in the board. For our purposes, I'll keep the defaults because we know that our items won't create duplicates anyway. And then we click on the Start Import button. Notice that after the import completes, the new items are added to a separate group created for the imported list. I'll just move them to the correct group and delete the unnecessary group for now. As one final note, you should be aware that it's also possible to create new items using the Monday.com API, but that falls a bit outside of the scope of this course. In the next lesson, we'll search, sort, and filter the data. See you there. Welcome back. Now that we've added some data into our board, we can play with a few features in Monday.com. In this lesson, we'll look at how to filter, search, and sort the data in our boards. Let's start with the easiest one first, search. With a board open, you'll notice a search box right next to the New Item button. This search box allows real-time full-text searching on the items in the current board. Simply click on the field and type the text you're searching for. The board will automatically be filtered to show only the items that contain the text you typed. Note that the search is performed across all the fields in the board. For example, if I search for the text 22, it shows all the items that include October 22 in the timeline. To clear the search, simply click on the little X. This will return to the full board view. Let's move on to sorting. To sort by any column, you simply hover over the name of the column. This will make the sorting arrows visible, allowing you to switch sorting on and to toggle the direction. Note that the search happens within the groups. To clear the sorting, simply click the Clear option. Alternatively, you can save the sort order. This will ensure that the board is always opened in the selected order. This approach to sorting is easy and fast, but it limits you to sorting only by one column at a time. If you need a multi-column sort, then we'll follow a different approach. Let's assume I want to sort by the number of guests first, but then have a secondary sort order based on the guest name. To do this, I select the Sort button from the menu bar. Here I can add 2 sort columns to enable my multi-level sort. This gives me a sorting by the number of guests firstly, and for all bookings that have the same number of guests, the secondary sort is then by the name of the items. Before we continue, let me first remove the sorting. Now let's move on to filtering. You'll use filtering quite a lot in Monday.com. It allows you to filter data in a board based on a set of predefined criteria. I'll start with a simple filter. let's do some cleanup and find any bookings where we don't have a defined booking period. Simply click on the filter button. This opens up the quick filter dialog, which makes it very simple to do basic filtering. Scroll to the right to find the booking period column, and then click on the blank value. Immediately after you click the value, the board is filtered to show only items where the booking period is blank. These quick filters are very valuable, but I tend to prefer the advanced filters view. Click on the filter button again, and then click the Switch to Advanced Filters option. This view gives you a more structured way to assemble your filter. For example, let's compose a new filter that shows us large bookings, i.e. bookings with more than 10 guests. First, I'll remove the previous filter condition. Then I select the number of guests column. For the condition, I select the larger than or equals condition. And under the value, I type 10. This filters the board to show only items where there are 10 or more guests. And sure enough, we can see that Keith Richards is planning a big party. Notice that you can add multiple filter conditions that are chained together using an AND or OR keyword. In boards that include a person column, like our maintenance board, we can also easily filter items by the person column. Let me show you quickly how to filter all maintenance tasks assigned to Sarah. I simply click on the person button next to the filter and then select Sarah's icon. The end result is the same as with the other filter methods. It's just a little easier and faster to do. And that brings us to the end of this lesson on searching, sorting, and filtering. See you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll change gears slightly and explore the details of individual items. Before we do, though, I just want to demonstrate a few formatting options that help you make your board items easier to explore. I'll open our bookings board to demonstrate. Firstly, I'm going to add a few additional columns just to ensure that the board requires more space than what we have available on the screen. So I'll start by creating a column to track the number of rooms that are needed. Then I'll add a checkbox to indicate whether an airport transfer is needed. Now I want to add 2 additional checkboxes, but instead of going through the standard process of adding and selecting more columns, I'm going to follow a different trick. I'll just say duplicate the existing column, and then I'll rename the heading. The first column is smoker, and the second column is wheelchair access. Additionally, I'll add a column to track which booking platform was used for the booking. I'll put Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com as the options. And lastly, I'll add a text column for recording any special dietary needs. You may have noticed that as I added more columns, Monday automatically resized the columns as best that it could. But once there were too many columns, it actually added a horizontal scroll bar to the bottom. And additionally, I think we should highlight that some of these columns are really very narrow. Now we can do some manual resizing of columns, but it is limited. So there are a few other options that Monday provides for us. So let's have a look at the first option that we've got, and that is to add a description to a column. So for example, in the smoker column here, I can add description. Another option that we have is to collapse and expand columns. So for example, let's say we wanted to grab the telephone column. We can actually collapse this column to free up some empty space. Once I do that, the column is still there. It's just this little mini sliver. And if I want to expand it, I simply click on the column. Lastly, I have the option to hide and show columns. By default, all columns are shown. But if I click on this display or hidden columns button, here I can select which items or which columns to display, and obviously the ones I don't select are hidden. So what I'll do here is I will hide the 3 checkbox columns. And that simply hides the columns from the board entirely. You have some other formatting options. For example, you can set the item height, you can apply conditional coloring, or you can set the default values per column. Now it's time for us to look at the item details. So if you click on an item name in the board, a screen pops out from the right-hand side. This screen contains various sections, which allows to work with the details of an item. The section of the item screen that you'll use most often is the Update section. This allows you to add any update to an item as needed. Simply click on the field and start typing your update. Once you click in the field, a rich text editing toolbar appears, allowing you to add formatted updates, just like you would in any other Word document. Additionally, you can add emojis, GIFs, and even files to the update. Yeah, I think that's probably sufficient. If you were the original author of an update, you can also edit the update. So if I just click on this little arrow here, I can say Edit Update. And then the last feature that's quite important is that if you @mention one of your colleagues, they will actually receive a notification immediately after this update. This approach to team communication is often referred to as in-context communication because it's linked directly to the item. Team members can like and reply to items directly linked to the item instead of having independent emails with their own threads. Also in the item screen, you have the activity log, which gives you a detailed audit trail of all the changes made to an item. And if you had any files attached, you would have seen them here in the Files tab. Depending on your detailed requirements, you may want to add additional item views from the Monday App Store, or you can even build your own. To add a new view, you simply click on the Add View button. Over here is a range of additional apps that provide views for your items. For now, I'll demonstrate by adding the Emails and Activities view. This view allows you to capture a range of activities and notes related to this item. For example, you may want to make a note of an in-person meeting that you had. So you simply click on New, Meeting, and provide the details of the meeting along with perhaps the date of the meeting. Additionally, you can use this view to send emails directly out of Monday.com. Now I can just click on the Send Mail button, and depending on whether you have previously linked an email to your Monday.com account or not, you may want to just select the item or connect for the first time. In my case, the connection has already been authorized, so we just proceed forward. And this allows me to then send a mail directly out of Monday.com, and to the recipient, it'll seem as if the mail came directly from me. Of course, we know that there's no jim@doors.com, so I'm not going to send the mail right now. I think I'll stop there with item details. In the next lesson, we'll explore how to create sub-items in Monday.com. See you there. Welcome back. In this lesson, I'll introduce you to the sub-items capability in Monday.com. Although fairly new, sub-items have become a key building block in many Monday solutions. So what are they exactly? Sub-items allow you to nest more detailed items underneath an existing item. This approach is often used in project plans. When adding sub-items, the sub-items in a board typically have very different columns to the main items in the boards. These columns are also configurable, just like the columns of the main items. Conceptually, sub-items can be seen as existing in a parent-child relationship with the main item. Although we haven't looked much at automations yet, you should be aware that many of the built-in automation recipes support sub-items. However, this isn't universally true. Let's switch into Monday and add some sub-items. I'm going to use the maintenance board. So let's assume we have a maintenance task to replace the carpets for all rooms on the first floor of our guest house. This is not a simple task that can be treated as a single item in our board. There are many sub-steps involved, so we'll add sub-items. The first step in that is to add a sub-items column. We click on the plus item and select the column type sub-items. Notice that the new column has a little icon that indicates a hierarchical structure. When you hover over it, a plus sign appears, allowing you to add items. Let me add a few sub-items. Notice that you can expand and collapse the sub-items as needed by simply clicking on the little icon. Also notice that the sub-items have their own columns. I'll add one numeric column for the estimated number of days needed to complete the task. I'll also add some sample data there. Now let me show you a cool thing. For any of the columns in the sub-items, you have the option to show summary information in the main item. For example, if we want to add up the total number of days in the main item, it's as simple as selecting the Show Summary on Parent Item option from the column view. And now it automatically adds up all the rows in the sub-items and displays it inside the parent item. And notice that the columns in the parent item is now shown using green text. If I click on the column settings, a new dialog appears that we haven't seen yet. Notice that it is labeled a mirror column, and we can even define the function to use for aggregating the data. The default is to sum them all up. Coincidentally, this leads neatly into our next lesson, where we'll discuss the ability to link boards and mirror columns across boards. See you there. Welcome back. In the previous lesson, we explored how sub-items can be linked to a single parent item. In this lesson, we'll look more broadly at how to link items from different boards. As your Monday.com account grows to support more workflows in your business, you will definitely reach a point where you need to work on information that resides in two boards. A simple example in our guest house is the list of contacts, which includes contact information for all our suppliers, customers, and contractors. This contact information is then used in multiple areas of our business. For example, in the maintenance board, we may want to specify which contractor we're using on a specific job. And in the bookings board, we want to have access to the customer's contact information. Of course, we could switch between those boards having two different tabs open, but that's just too much effort and slows us down. Another option is to duplicate the information across multiple boards, but that will lead to data integrity issues. The better option is to link the boards together and view the information in one place. So let's see how this will work. I'm switching back into Monday, but first we'll need to quickly create a contacts board based off the vanilla contacts template. The only change I'll make is to adjust the possible values in the type column. Okay, so there we have it, a generic contacts board. Let's now switch into our maintenance board. In a previous lesson, we added a text column here titled Contractor Name, where we would literally have to type in the name of our contractor. But now, of course, since we have a contacts board, we would want to reference the contact from that board. Let me start by deleting the old text column. And also, just to make sure we don't have to scroll around too much, I'll minimize the menu and perhaps collapse a column. Nice. Now we can begin connecting the boards. So I'll click on the plus icon and select Connect Boards. This opens up a wizard that guides me through the process. First, I need to select the board I want to connect with. Here, I'll pick the Contacts board. Note that there are a few more advanced options available in this dialog, but we'll stick with the simplest option, which is to create a one-directional relationship with one other board. At this point, our boards are already connected, but they're not sharing any data yet. To show data from the contacts board inside the maintenance board, we need to set up a mirrored column. Now I'm presented with a list of columns from the contacts board. I'll pick the email column for now. And voila, our link has been established. Of course, we haven't actually linked any items yet, so let me do that now. All I need to do is to click on the contacts cell. It immediately opens up a searchable list of contacts. Once I've found the one I'm interested in, I'll select it. Notice that the mirrored email column is automatically populated. Pretty slick, if I have to say so myself. What we followed here was the simplest possible option. There are quite a few variations on this approach. In particular, you can configure whether or not links are allowed to multiple items in the target board or just one. You can also link to multiple boards, which is sometimes useful if you split similar data into different boards. You can add multiple mirrored columns as well. For example, here I'm going to add the contractor's telephone number as well. Of course, You'd want to rename the connected board and mirrored columns to help readability. And lastly, you have the option to create a bi-directional link up. This will create an inverse link on the target board as well, which is sometimes useful. For now, I'll stick to the basics as we have it. Now that our connected boards and mirror columns are added, we no longer have to jump between boards. We can easily see all the information about a maintenance job in one place, and we know the information is accurate. If the source information gets changed in the contacts board, it will automatically reflect here. So this was a first glimpse into what becomes possible when you link boards together. Of course, there's an infinite number of permutations about how you could choose to use them in your environment. Go forth and conquer.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.